Okay, Carl, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay, good. I got the bottom toolbar showing up now. Is that showing up on?
Yeah, just a click in the window, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there it goes. Okay. Okay. Well, hello to everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, as fitting. This is Carl, K9LA, and I'm going to talk about Cycle 24 mostly, but there's some other topics that I thought I'd bring into the presentation because I have seen some discussion on some of the reflectors and thought I'd throw my 2 cents in. So what we're going to do is do a really quick review of my August 2009 presentation. It's only 3 slides, and it shows where we were with respect to Cycle 23 and 24 back in August of 2009, almost 3 years ago. Then we'll get into recent data. What's happened recently also has allowed us to look at the seasonal effects on propagation, so we'll take a look at that. We'll ask and answer 4 relevant Cycle 24 questions. And then 2 other topics that came, like I said, come from the reflectors. The effect of trees on HF propagation and the best height for an antenna. Now, the best height for an antenna topic comes out of all the work that N6BV has done for amateur radio, and he's done quite a lot. He recently had a webinar, and I hope you were able to see it. And if you ever have a chance to view his other future webinars, by all means do it. Like I said, he's done a lot of good work for amateur radio. So let's get started. Quick review of August 2009. What we're looking at is a chart I had back then, and what it really did is just shows solar minimums. The one we were going through at the time, which is the bold red line, and the 5 previous solar minimums. And at the time, we were wondering, how long were we going to be at solar minimum? It sure looked like we were at solar minimum. There's, not a heck of a lot lower we could have gone, and well, we didn't have to wait too long, as we'll see in a couple slides. This is a plot from Dr. David Hathaway from the Marshall Space Flight Center, and what it did is listed the monthly sunspot numbers from Cycle 23 and Cycle 24. In August 2009, we've been seeing Cycle 24 sunspots for about 1.5 years, but things just hadn't really started ramping up yet. It was kind of flat, and it just extended our solar minimum. And back in August of 2009, close that window, this was the prediction from ISIS, which is the International Space Environment Service. They predicted Cycle 24 would reach a peak of about 90 in terms of the smooth sunspot number, and it would do it in early 2013. Now, I should mention, prior to this prediction, the International Space Environment Service was carrying 2 predictions, one for a very high cycle, smooth sunspot number of about 140, and one for a low cycle of 90. Now, since we had a very long descent to solar minimum, that kind of swayed most of the solar scientists into believing that this Cycle 24 was going to be a low one. So that's why the prediction reverted back to the 90, and that's what they've carried ever since. And we'll talk about that a little bit more too. Okay, there we go. Okay, let's look at some recent data. Here's that first chart, just with all the solar min data for Cycle 23-24. And the horizontal axis is simply the months after the minimum, the smooth sunspot number descended below a value of 20. You can see that we got spoiled in our lifetimes with the 5 previous solar minimum periods were about 20 months, 2 years. So we kind of expected the minimum between 23 and 24 to be short like that, and it wasn't. In fact, it ended up at about 56 months between the descent below 20 and the ascent above 20. That certainly was the longest of our lifetimes, but when you look at all the history, we've had similar minimum periods. In fact, cycles 11, the minimum between 11 and 12, 12 and 13, 13 and 14, and 14 and 15 were quite similar. And if you go back even further, there were some longer ones. So this was not unusual when you looked at all the history. Of course, what you have to remember is, how good is our sunspot data back in the, starting in the about mid-1750s. That's a whole new topic, and maybe I'll offer to do a webinar for the PBRC again on just talking about sunspot data. It's pretty interesting. A lot of good stuff has come out of it, and it I think has given us a better picture of what's going on back then. Now, if we look at how long we were at solar minimum, in other words, when the smooth sunspot number was less than or equal to 20, and plot that against what the maximum of the next solar cycle was, we get a pretty obvious trend. It's not a perfect correlation, but it's quite obvious that the longer you spend at solar minimum, the smaller the next cycle is going to be. So if we take our 56 months that we were at solar min between cycle 23 and 24, kind of says we're going to, cycle 24 is going to be around 90 or so, which kind of fits in nice with that ICIS prediction. Thought I'd throw this in just to show that, when cycle 24 started in January of 2008, that's when the first sunspot was seen. Like I said, though, it took a while for things to get started. You can see if you look at the January 2008, there's a little blue tick there. That's the first sunspot of cycle 24. But then for quite a number of months, in fact, till about the summer of 2009, didn't really do a lot. Kind of just sat there, and we had some sunspots. Eventually, the cycle 23 spots went away, and cycle 24 started up. So we can summarize it by saying cycle 24 was very slow to begin its ascent. Now you can see what's happened with the recent data. The most recent monthly data, of course, is for June of 2012, and that's the vertical blue bars. The smooth sunspot cycle is the green line, and you can see it kind of leveled off around a smooth sunspot number of 60 in about August of 2011, and it's kind of floated around there for a number of months. Last month, June was May and June were fairly active, and that caused a little uptick here in the smooth sunspot number. So, have we reached the peak, or is just this a temporary lull? We'll just have to wait and see for the next several months of monthly data and see how that impacts the smooth sunspot number. This is in terms of the 10.7 centimeter solar flux. We got the June monthly data is the latest, and the smooth sunspot number, the latest, is December 2011, and you can see there's similar trends. A very long solar minimum, and then the smooth solar flux leveled off at about 120, and it's been sitting there for a while. It's starting to take an uptick also, so hopefully it'll go a little bit higher and maybe reach the prediction of the International Space Environment Service of 90. Another interesting thing to look at is geomagnetic field activity. In general, elevated geomagnetic field activity causes a degradation in our bands, except for the VHFers. They probably enjoy it. It's interesting to plot the number of days in a month when the planetary A index was less than or equal to 7. That's the blue, very spiky data. I've added a running average to that. That's the black line to try and help show where things are going. And of course, the big red line is the smooth sunspot number. You can see that in the January 96 to 98 time frame. That was solar min between 22 and 23. There were lots of days in the month when the AP index was less than 7. In other words, the Earth's magnetic field was very quiet. And you can see what happened in this recent solar minimum. Because it was so long, we reached unprecedented levels of low geomagnetic field activity. And right now it appears that we're still quieter than the solar minimum period of 1996. So that kind of brings up an interesting question. Where's 160 meters? You know, we're going to have a good top band season this fall. According to this data, we should, but there's another effect that I don't think we really understand enough, and that's the effect of galactic cosmic rays. When the sun is very quiet, its magnetic field is very low and quiet, and thus all those galactic cosmic rays come into the Earth, and they cause ionization down at D region altitudes. It's because they're mostly very energetic protons, and they can get down that low. So it could be that maybe we're too quiet. We'll just have to wait and see what happens with top band this season. You would think that perhaps over the pole pass would be very good, so we'll see what happens. Okay, here's just a comparison of cycle 24 and cycle 23. And what you can see is for a short time, cycle 24 had a rate of ascent that was very comparable to cycle 23. In fact, I saw a little comparison on a website that kind of asked the question, is cycle 24 really that bad compared to cycle 23? And you have to admit that, yeah, there are times when cycle 24 was quite comparable to 23, but the fact is that cycle 24 was so slow to start, that's probably going to result in a very low cycle 24. So is cycle 24 comparable to 23? Overall, I probably have to say probably not, mainly because it's probably going to be less, around 90 or even less. We'll have to see here. Here are the current predictions. The one on the left is the latest from the International Space Environment Service. They've not changed their prediction since August of 2009. And you can see that they're plotting the monthly data also, with the blue line being the smooth data. And they're still predicting 90. So we still got a way to go, hopefully, and that'll certainly help 10 meters and might even help 6 meters. We'll talk about that a little bit later. On the right is the prediction by the Marshall Space Flight Center down in Huntsville, Alabama. And they're nominally predicting 60, which says maybe we're, if their prediction is true, that says maybe we're there. We'll have to wait and see. They also have error bars that says it could get up to 90, so they're kind of covered in case we do go up a little bit higher. So those are probably the two predictions that are most well known. There's probably at least 50 more out there, and of course the ones that predicted a very high solar cycle they're probably out of the running, and the only ones that are left are the ones that are probably around 100 or so. That seems to be where we're headed. Thought I'd throw this one in just to show how optimistic we were when cycle 23 was kind of right at minimum initially. There were predictions, cycle 24 was going to be a huge one of about a smooth sunspot number of about 180. And, well, some people said, well, maybe it won't be that high. It'll only get up to 150. Well, if we get more than 100, we'll be lucky, I think. So if this was only true, we'd be really enjoying 10 meters and also some F2 propagation on 6 meters probably. Okay, seasonal effects. With the smooth sunspot number hovering around 60 for the last 6 months or so, the seasonal effects of propagation on 10 meters it really showed up. So first let's look at some MUFs along two paths at a smooth sunspot number of 60. We'll look at W3 to Europe, to JA, and to South America, so we get a good picture of the east coast of North America. Oh boy, got the cat up here now. Also, we'll look at the path from England to Eastern Europe to W4 and to JA. And we'll see that things are pretty similar.